From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan.
Pig-picking pie.
If you've got a tip for Melissa, an argument you shouldn't have overheard, something on your police scanner that didn't sound quite right, why vitamins are made to taste like gummy bears and not medium rare ribeyes, anything, tell us about it by calling the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837, or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. And now here's your host, walking that fine line between simply enjoying air conditioning and building a temple to Willis Carrier, Melissa Morgan.
More cowbell. Yeah, Willis Carrier is my boyfriend.
Oh, I think he's more than your boyfriend.
Yeah.
I think he's like your spiritual animal or
He
something.
is. You know, one of the things I loved about you, Producer Mark, is that you're a polar bear like me.
Yes.
It has been in the high 90s to low hundreds.
It's been bad.
For several weeks here, and we are not used to the humidity part. It's hot. It's the low desert. We get it.
Well,
but we usually stay in the 20% humidity range.
it's dry. It's normally dry. Not dry like Phoenix dry, but it's dry.
Yeah, occasionally we get down to the single digits, and that's typically when it's, wildfire weather, when it's hot and dry. But we have had humidity in the, 60%, which I know people in the Midwest are like, fuck you, sissy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I am dying and I'm being depleted of my soul.
I haven't perspired the way I've been perspiring over the last couple of weeks since I was in my 20s. I mean, I walk outside and I exert a little energy, and man, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And the thing is, Producer Mark doesn't sweat very much. I sweat
don't.
like a whore in church. Like if you look at me with heated eyes, I start to sweat, and Producer Mark really doesn't. So the humidity, I walked Siren Marie Morgan Humphreys one morning early and did not put my hair up like in a bun on top of my head. And when I came back, the back of my hair was soaking wet like I'd just gotten out of the shower.
Yeah.
And that really does not happen here.
Yeah.
It's I know people are like, hey, it's the weather. When are you going to talk about something interesting, dumb bitch?
Yes. And
So our air conditioning was sort of out for about 36 hours.
yeah.
We needed our condensation line blown out.
Blown out, is that what they said? I don't even know what that means.
Yeah. We developed a crack in the ceiling of the first floor, and the air conditioning unit is in a closet on the second floor. And I was like, oh no, Mark, why is the ceiling opening up? And apparently it was just leaking. And Mark's like, oh yeah, sometimes I hear dripping. I'm like, well, thanks.
Well, I'd only heard it for a couple of days, but but I wasn't sure what it was. I thought, well, I didn't realize, and of course I'd forgotten.
It's the telltale air conditioner.
It's the
Edgar
condensate.
Edgar Allan Cold.
Yeah, I like that. The air conditioning picks up humidity, picks up water in the air, because that's what it does. It dehumidifies.
And it's been so humid.
And so the pan that the little pan that takes the overflow condensate, because the line was backed up a little bit, overflowed, and it was going through the ceiling.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
What was that? Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for that technical story.
I appreciate it.
No, now we're back and we have air conditioning and
now all we have to worry about is the absolutely egregious bill we get every month.
You don't want to know about the bill.
Yeah.
The Southern California Edison is filled with a bunch of wallet rapers.
Ooh. Man, you are creative today with the terms of art that you're coming up with here.
They rape the wallet. So at the beginning I screwed up and I said pig picking pie.
Yeah.
And it's pig picking cake. So I have the recipe printed out. I'm very excited about it.
I don't know if I want to know about that.
I know. It does not have ham in it. It is a box of yellow cake. It's a Southern thing, apparently. Yeah. I'm from Kentucky. I'd never heard of it. But it was all over some sort of Facebook page, and it was like, here's the recipe. And I'm like, some people said it was called pea picking. Like,
that sounds even worse.
But it doesn't have peas in it either. But it's got like pineapple and mandarin oranges and a yellow cake and whipped cream.
Okay.
It's not something you want?
No, we'll try
I want it.
I'll try anything, I guess.
I want it. I'm making me a pig picking cake.
Why do they call it pig picking?
You know what? I don't know.
There's no pig present in the ingredients you just described.
There is not. But then when it was pea picking cake, there's no peas in it either.
Or pea.
Oh, there could be urine because it's yellow.
It's yellow?
You know what? You're right.
All right.
I never thought of it that way.
Okay.
So, yeah. I wanted to send a get well out to a retired detective who we hope to interview soon. And he's such a tough guy. I texted him earlier today and gave him a couple of dates like, hey, could you be available this date or this date? You know, blah, blah. And he calls me from lying on a bed in a trauma center and said, yeah, I got some bad news. I'm going to be out of commission for a little bit. And I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't know where he was calling me from. He goes, I'm calling you from a trauma center. I'm waiting to be checked in. I had a bad fall and they think I snapped my spine.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah, is that all? And then he goes, yeah, just call me at the beginning of next week. And I'm like, okay.
Call me at the beginning of next week. My spine might be broken. But, yeah, I'll do the interview.
Well, you know how people in law enforcement, it's like, walk it off, buddy. Just walk it off, you and your snapped spine. So right. I want to send a lot of get well wishes out to him because he seems like a real, I'm going to call him a straight shooter because I think that really applies, but he seems like a very kind of a spectacular fellow.
Well, he's conscientious for sure if he's calling you to...
Called me.
From the trauma center.
Lying on a gurney. Yeah.
Wowie.
I'm going to be out of commission for a little bit. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I was like, I thought maybe he's going on vacation. Nope. Snapped spine. So yeah, sending him all good thoughts, honestly. So really hoping, selfishly we get to talk to him because I think he's going to be a wealth of knowledge about this case. And I am very happy to have him on board and really hope that we can talk to him sooner rather than later. But that will depend on how quickly he heals. If his spine is really snapped, that sounds absolutely terrible, but I'm just,
we wish him well.
We absolutely wish him well. So thank you so much to the tipsters who send us emails, who rate and review and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. We got a lovely review and we're still, talk about a mystery, we're still trying to figure it out.
I've lost sleep over this one.
Because this reviewer said that he or she worked with producer Mark years ago, and producer Mark has worked for the same company for 38 years.
It's 30.
37?
37. Yeah, I'm in my 38th year.
38th year. Yeah. So that's a lot of years, and we can't by the podcast name, the Apple podcast name, figure out who it is. They left a beautiful review saying, look, full disclosure, I worked with producer Mark years ago. I'm a fan of his music and kept up with his travels and website. And then I found out, he was doing this podcast, and I walk 3 miles a day and I listen to the podcast, and it's, well done. And she said lots of nice things. We're not sure if it's a she or he. But...
I think it's a male, actually.
Oh, okay.
And did a little research on the handle that this person uses, and there is somebody with the same handle that has uploaded some legal documents onto a website that provides legal documents for people, and so I'm thinking it's somebody that I worked with that may have worked in the legal department back when we had a legal department when I first started with the company, but I don't know. I can't think of who that might be.
Okay. Well, maybe the person will come forward because they said they listen on Google Podcasts, but had to find their Apple username, had to remember and retrieve their Apple username to leave the review, which we're very grateful for. So that's a lovely thing. If you would like to send us an email about a case you would like to hear us cover, please feel free to email us at jttipsters@gmail.com. You can call us on the Tipster hotline at 832-847-7837. And we would be very grateful if you would take the time to rate the podcast, subscribe, and if you have a few extra minutes to review the podcast for Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, we'd be very grateful. Apparently, those things really matter, and that's how people find us. So it does get somewhat daunting when you keep hearing over and over again, I just found you. And we're grateful that people just have found us, but we don't know how to get more people to find us faster.
We're trying to work on it.
Yeah, producer Mark is trying to work on it. And, who knows, maybe there'll be some things coming up in the future that will be helpful. But, we are really grateful for the help that you, the tipsters, give us. You guys, if it weren't for you, there'd be no us. So thank you for that. So this is a case that I just was like, oh no, I don't want to do this. But I kept looking and looking and thought, okay, it needs to be done. And I don't want the victim to be lost because the story is very important in the world of DNA and the world of legal decisions. I mean, it's a layered case, but I don't want the victim to be lost because we don't even know her name. She is a Jane Doe. She is sometimes known as the Sorrento Jane Doe. She was found in a state park in Florida. And the thing is, there are many ways to identify her, and they have a lot of information. And I'm still really stumped that, 30 years later, almost 30 years, it was December of 1991, we don't know who she is. She needs to be identified, and she needs a proper burial. She's in a Jane Doe plot, which I'll explain a little later, but let's go back to December 7th of 1991, and a hiker is walking through the Seminole State Forest, and he sees drag marks, and he thinks perhaps a bear had drug a victim up onto a hill or, into the woods. And he follows the drag marks, and he sees a kind of a rudimentary pile of branches, and he sees what he thinks is a mannequin's leg sticking out. And
oh boy,
note here, it's never a mannequin.
Yeah.
And it's a woman that has been tortured, raped, strangled, and posed by what the hiker calls a human monster. So it wasn't a bear, it was a human monster. So as we know, in December of 1991, DNA wasn't really, it was just kind of coming into its own as far as people being identified. This woman was found near the Wakiva River in part of Lake County and part of the Seminole State Forest. And, she is unique. The situation is unique. She was found within 12 hours of being murdered, and she was still very identifiable. Her face was very identifiable, no matter how much she had been beaten. And later on, we'll find that a prosecutor describes her to the judge as being beaten to a pulp. But she had been tortured. She had been poked with sticks. She had been raped with foreign objects. Now, the age has been tightened up. The original description was 25 to 40. They now say between 30 and 35. She's 5'4", 124 pounds with hazel eyes. And we don't get to hear those details unless it's someone who is found quickly. And, you don't get to know that the eyes are hazel unless someone's found quickly.
Right.
And here she was within 12 hours. So she's distinctive in that she had shoulder-length brown hair, and the sides were what was known as razor cut, which was, kind of a fancy style that someone would do, a hairstylist would do. It was very big in the 90s, kind of a Madonna kind of thing. The hair was dark brown at the top, but then she had blonde at the bottom, kind of, like what would now be called an ombre style. The last 2 to 4 inches of the hair was dyed blonde. She had on a red sweatshirt, a white blouse underneath that, and one white sock left on her foot and nothing on the bottom. And the hiker said she had been posed, sexually posed to be, provocative, even though she was covered with sticks and twigs. Very, very strange. The thing that's unusual about her accessories are these long dangling earrings that had been kind of tangled in her hair. They were gold. And I'm going to post a picture because they are so unique. If someone sees them and recognizes them as someone they knew or a relative had, and we still have hope that she can be identified, and I'll explain why. But these earrings are distinctive. They're gold with a heart and a star, and they kind of dangle. There's it's very early 90s kind of earrings. She had orthodontia care at some point, but obviously later in her life, things were maybe different. Her teeth had started to decay. There was cocaine in her bloodstream. Now, here's details I find interesting, and I'm not quite sure how to process them. They said she had given birth at least once and maybe twice. I don't know. I've never had a child. I know there are ways that a lot of times they can tell whether the woman's pelvis has, maybe been expanded. I was just speaking with another podcast host who has 3 sons, and one of her sons chipped her pelvis when he was born. So that may have been something that was a clue that she'd given birth to at least one child.
I've never heard of that before.
It's interesting, the things that medical examiners can figure out from a person, especially one that hasn't been deceased very long. This is the thing I think is really odd. They said she had extremely muscular legs, and so they thought that she may have been a dancer at a topless club.
Okay.
Was she wearing pasties when you found her? She has muscular legs.
Yeah, so she could have been a dancer of any kind.
Right. Or
any kind.
A runner, or worked in an industry that, who knows. But at a topless club. So that was sort of interesting. So
yeah, that's what you get when you get a bunch of men working the case. It tells you what they do in their spare time.
She had those muscular legs like
there's no other
do.
There's no other kind of dancer.
No other answer. Yeah.
Oh, she's a dancer? Oh, okay. Well, in a topless bar. Sure.
Yeah, and she was topless because her legs were muscular. What? Yeah, it's very, very interesting. So here's where the case really becomes not about her, but I want to try to remember her the entire time. It takes until 1995 before the Florida Department of Law Enforcement links the DNA, the semen left on her body, to someone. And this is, as we know, DNA in its infancy. So it was linked to a 29-year-old repetitive rapist named Joseph Algernon Rolle Jr., R-O-L-L-E.
That's a name.
Yeah, I love that his middle name is Algernon, more than I can tell you. Joseph Algernon Rolle Jr. And he was a Florida resident. And it had come up in a blood test that they had taken and put into a database. And at the time, there were only 10,000 samples to choose from in this database at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, which we know now there are millions of samples to choose from. But in 1995, the hit came back to Joseph Rolle Jr. So he's 29 at the time. He is arrested, and he comes up for trial. And I do have to say, and it bothers me greatly, but his trial is a fascinating one for Florida, just for the legalities, for everything that happened. Because they found the Sorrento Jane Doe so quickly, they have hair, they have dental, they have DNA, they have, pictures, of a pretty identifiable person. They have fingerprints, they have everything that they can have for the Sorrento Jane Doe, and yet they don't have her name. But in a stroke of luck, they were able to connect it to Joseph Rolle. So he is brought up for trial, and his trial actually becomes a landmark trial. The public defender's office challenges the DNA testing because this is very new, right? And the Florida Department of Law Enforcement brings up every expert they can and says, look, the odds of anyone else depositing that semen on her body, in her body, and having that DNA profile is, if it's someone other than Joseph Rolle, it's 1 in 8 billion.
Okay. That's what you call compelling evidence.
It's extremely compelling evidence. They had a bite mark evidence expert, which they, now say, is junk science, but he used clay models and plastic overlays to make, models of Joseph Rolle's bite marks. She was tortured. She was tortured and she was strangled. Prosecutors brought 2 women to testify against Joseph Rolle, who had been raped and choked by him. Okay? Now, I don't want to cut too quickly to the end, but I'm going to tell you he was convicted of her rape and not of her murder.
Oh my God.
Right.
Really?
Yes. And there are circumstances why, and I don't agree with any of them. I will be honest with you, and I'm probably going to rely on producer Mark to explain some legal ramifications.
We'll see, but this is way above my head, I think.
It's very difficult for me, to explain, and I'm telling you, I have read over this so many times trying to get it through my head why someone would vote this way. But before I get to that, I do want to say there's great articles about this case, about the Sorrento Jane Doe, and about Joseph Rolle. And the Orlando Sentinel, the Daily Commercial. I have so many amazing articles here that, I can put in the show notes that are, and there's more to come because it is a really interesting case. So Joseph Rolle is charged with the rape, torture, and murder of the still unknown Jane Doe from 1991. He wasn't picked up till 1995 because of his DNA, and then he is put on trial in 1996. So the state doesn't have to disclose. I'm telling you this case, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds because it's so legally layered. I don't exactly know how to explain it. But so the state of Florida had to actually reevaluate their death penalty because of this case. There was a case that was used as an example from 1981, and the assistant state attorney, Bill Gross, brought this up, talking about this 1981 Florida Supreme Court ruling against 2 men who had killed a 21-year-old pregnant girl. They had taken her, raped her, beaten her, and then shot her in the back of the head. And then the same day, they had killed a Hernando County deputy sheriff while they were robbing a convenience store. So the state attorney said that the shooting of the deputy showed a history of prior acts that was aggravating circumstances that called for the death penalty. And Chief Justice Alan Sundberg dissented from the majority opinion and pointed out that the shooting of the deputy happened after the young girl was raped and murdered.
Right, okay.
So that couldn't show a history of prior acts. The majority ruled otherwise, but one result of that ruling was that defendants like Joseph Rolle do not have access ahead of time to prosecutors' arguments for the death penalty.
Interesting.
I know. So, State Attorney General Bill Gross joked that if prosecutors share their strategy, defense attorneys should share theirs. And he said, I'll show you my marbles if you show me yours.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
So the jurors were allowed to go home. They weren't isolated in a motel. They weren't blocked about news reports from the trial. They got to go home every night. And I don't know if that made a difference, but what they voted was that he be given a life sentence for the rape of the Sorrento Jane Doe. But they could not charge him with the murder.
They didn't think there was enough evidence to charge him for the murder?
I don't know if, I don't know why, why this would happen. Obviously, the fact that he was given life, his defense attorney said, we're disappointed in the ruling. And of course, the prosecutor said, well, at least justice was sort of served. And I don't know that I believe that.
Well, it doesn't sound like it.
His defense attorney said that the statistics that the prosecutor put forward, that he raped and killed the Sorrento County Jane Doe, are too prejudicial and should not be allowed to be presented at his murder trial.
I'm trying to figure... and unless there was not enough evidence to show that he actually murdered her, which I don't know.
Let's say you're a rapist who strangles people. What would be your defense? Oh, I raped her, but I didn't kill her.
Yeah, I raped her and just left her alone. Somebody else must have come.
So, yeah, somebody else came by and killed her and was like, well, you know what? She's been raped and poked with sticks and strangled, but not to death. So,
Well, it also could have been, I don't know what his defense was. His defense probably was, well, yeah, I had sex with her, but it was consensual. That's usually what the defense is. And somebody else beat her up and killed her.
Right.
But
right. I'm a rapist who strangles people, but I didn't strangle this one. So here's the only thing that I could see that his attorney could use. There was an abandoned Range Rover that was parked not too far from her body. And they tracked that down to someone. And they, posit that he probably killed her.
That's what the police are think now?
The defense attorney said, what about this person?
I see. So they did identify the owner of the Range Rover, and they said, well, it could have very well been this guy.
Right.
And that's enough reasonable doubt here? I don't know.
I don't understand how it happened. That's why I think this case is, legally pretty interesting. Joseph Rolle is still alive, and I wish, that he weren't, but he denies even knowing her. He was like, no, I don't know her name. I don't know anything about her. My semen's all up in her and all over her, but I don't know how that happened. Maybe it just flew out of my body.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's not, it doesn't make much sense.
No, I am trying so hard. The only thing I can think is that at the beginning of DNA being used, a lot of jurors apparently felt overwhelmed. That's why I'm trying not to overwhelm everyone with the legal ramifications of this trial, but it's aggravating to the point of, I don't even know what to say. I don't know what to say.
Right.
So the state attorney general said, well, the judge gave the only sentence that was appropriate under the facts of Mr. Rolle's criminal background and the ferocity of this particular crime. I'm not sure why he would even say that, but, the only thing he, I guess, thinks is a victory is that Joseph Rolle will not be back on the streets. Several of his...
Did he get life without parole?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So several of his family members were, there during the trial, and they declined to comment. 2 women that he had raped and strangled when the sentence was read lifted their fists in victory. And I was like, I guess, but that just doesn't seem like enough of a...
No.
If you sentence someone to life without parole for rape, I don't know how... I'm still so confused by this. I can tell you that the jury convicted Joseph A. Rolle of sexual battery with force likely to cause physical injury, but stopping short of murder.
Maybe there was some sort of disagreement in the jury room that maybe there was one juror that just was a nut and thought, oh well, he didn't kill her, but and that maybe there was a discussion among the other jurors. Well, look, if we convict him of rape, With whatever you said, the potential to cause bodily
Sexual
harm.
battery with force likely to cause physical injury.
The judge is still probably going to give him life without parole. So let's just do that.
Well, what happened was Attorney General Bill Gross said this young lady was beaten to a pulp. He's asking the judge, we're asking you to sentence him to as much time as legally possible for the safety of the community.
Right. Yep.
Now, Detective Al Gussler, who was the detective who worked for the longest time on her case, said that he's satisfied with the sentence, but still so unhappy that she has not been identified. And he said, we were really hoping at the end of this trial we would know her identity, but his attorneys won't let him talk to us, and we don't know who she is yet.
And he refuses to identify her.
He says he denies ever meeting her. He was like, I don't know her. I don't know her.
What's he think? Think he's going to get a parole at some point?
I have no idea what he's thinking. How do you rape and beat and torture a woman and say, well, I didn't know her? What is he saying that he stumbled upon her and Range Rover guy had killed her, so he just took the opportunity to then rape her with sticks and his penis and then, leave?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know. I don't even know what to say anymore. I mean, this is the strangest thing I've ever read. And someone so distinctive,
there's photographs of her face, right?
Like I said, the postmortem photographs I will be honest, don't do a lot, in my mind. But what we do have is the gift of Carl Koppelman. So there was an original sketch of her from an artist named Barbara Martin, who is apparently very well known and does a good job. But there's no one like Carl Koppelman. Carl Koppelman finds a person's soul. I mean, I don't know how he does it, but he sees a deceased person and draws them. He's like an open channel or something. He gets, messages from beyond. I guess that's the mark of a true artist. I don't know. But what he does is bring these people to life. If you have ever seen any of his artist rendering of a decedent and then see when they are identified, sometimes 20, 30, 40 years later, he is on the money. When we have a true picture of who this person is, and believe me, not everyone he sketches is found within 12 hours. He has to extrapolate from their bone structure, their hair color, how would they have maybe worn their hair at the time? I mean, what he does is nothing, I'm just going to have to say, nothing short of a miracle. Nothing short of a miracle.
That's wonderful, though we do have drawings that Koppelman made.
With her clothing, that's the thing he does, is he puts them in the clothing they were found in. With those distinctive earrings, I will absolutely put, I don't want to put her postmortem picture up because they, what they do is they think they're doing the right thing. And granted, this was 30 years ago, right? But they wash the bodies. A lot of them have their hair all slicked back. They're, if you know anything about the death investigation or even a funeral parlor, someone who embalms people, the head is lifted up on a block. They're lying down, supine, their head's on a block, holding them up. Their hair is combed back. They don't look like that in real life. If you can't imagine what they look like asleep or something, if you don't know them that well, and how many of us have seen people, you might see someone and go, I recognize her. She went to my grocery store. You don't know what she looks like when she's asleep or dead. That's the thing that Carl Koppelman does, is he brings them back to life. There's this quote, that Watson said to Sherlock Holmes in The Science of Deduction. And he said, you have an extraordinary genius for minutia. And that is Carl Koppelman. He has an extraordinary genius for minutia, for the things that, you can draw any person. Anyone can draw a person. Looking at a picture, you can trace a picture outline of them. But to make them a fully realized human, what they looked like when they were alive is a rare gift. It's a rare gift, and he does it. And I will post her picture wearing these distinctive earrings and the clothing she had on. And you know, I know it's 30 years later, but she was somebody.
Yeah, somebody's if his drawings are that have been shown over and over again to be that accurate, then somebody out there will look at the drawing and say, I know who this is.
That's something that one of the detectives from the Lake County Sheriff's Office said. Somebody has all the answers. Somebody has all the answers. And I know with everything entered into, you know, DNA, you know, databases and having all of her, you know, all of the details they have, at some point, something will have to hit. But it would be great if it were sooner rather than later. And I'll explain the people who are tending to her grave. But it's, you know, humans are fascinating. The human body is fascinating. And, you know, soft tissue and hair, those things can deteriorate. But bones and teeth are really great telltale signs. You know, the teeth can tell you where did they live when they were young. Their bones can tell you where did they live before they died. You know, there was some pitting on her pelvic bones, which could have indicated that she had a kid. I think they were hopefully going by that as opposed to the stretch marks, but I don't know. But, you know, they're like, look, if these pieces of information didn't tell us who killed her, which they ended up doing, we do know there are some clues about where she was from, what had happened to her. I mean, she is in every database you can think of. Identifyus.org. She's in NamUs. I mean, she's in all of the databases you can think of, including the Florida Department of Law Enforcement database.
And they've obviously got her DNA.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
She is, her DNA, her fingerprints, all of her measurements, bone, teeth. They have all sorts of blood. They have everything that you could use to identify someone. They have it. And I just don't know why it hasn't.
Yeah, I don't know why somebody isn't doing what David Middleman does and just start looking for family somewhere out there.
And, you know, the fact that she had at least one kid, if not more, that's another thing, right? She didn't. Her kids are out there somewhere, probably. Right. Whether she, you know, was still in their lives or whether she had given them up for adoption, or, you know, we don't know. But so a couple, Sue and Alessandro Raudabush, are the caretakers of the Greater Altoona Society Cemetery, and they took over it, and it had been kind of abandoned, and they took over it and they put a Jane Doe marker on her grave. And Sue said, you know what? I really want to see her real name. And Sue's mother said, look, you can't save everybody. And Sue said, no, but I can save one at a time, and they should be able to rest in peace.
Oh, wow.
And she's right. So one last piece of information I thought was really interesting about this case before I give you some information on if you have any ideas of who this could be, where you can call, where you can go. I don't know if anyone remembers this show, but I loved it. And producer Mark and I watched it quite a bit. It was the Dale Hinman show that was on Court TV.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember her?
Yeah, she was a blonde.
Yep.
She worked in Florida.
Yep.
Yep.
And here we go. She worked in Florida. Body of evidence from the case files of Dale Hinman. So I fell in love with her, and her show ran from 2001 to 2008. I think it was like 7 years.
Wow.
On Court TV.
Okay.
And this is just to let you know how long ago this was. It premiered in 2001. And I don't know that you could say this now. It's such a different world. But executives from Court TV said, we picked her because we thought that a former deputy with a penchant for expensive suits and high heels would appeal to female viewers.
Yeah.
We were looking for a strong female who was a forensics expert, said Court TV Vice President Frederica Brookfield. And I know it's like, can you even say that now?
Oh, probably not. But you know what? She was good though. She was
great.
Really good on TV. And
she was. I have to tell you, it brought back so many memories. Do you remember, producer Mark, us watching that and me being fascinated by her French tip nails?
Oh, that's right.
She had the best nails.
She was a fashion plate.
She was a fashionista.
Yeah, but she did. She wore those business suits.
Yep, she did.
And the high heels on every show.
Yep.
Kind of a tough, really smart investigator.
And just, I worshipped Dale Hinman. I still do. And she is spectacular. And I found out more about her. She trained under John Douglas. I had no idea she trained in the FBI under John Douglas. She was one of the first female profilers.
Oh.
And she's so inclusive. I'll explain in a second. In this article that was in the Orlando Sentinel about the show premiering, there were two cases she covered in the 1 hour pilot, and one of them was this Lake County Sorrento Jane Doe. And she told, this was before they arrested Joseph Rolle, she said, the haphazard shallow grave shows that the person that attacked her didn't really know her and wasn't that close to her.
Yeah, didn't really care about her.
Right.
Right.
And then 4 years later, DNA shows that it's Joseph Rolle, and he's convicted of raping her, but not of murdering her. I mean, Dale Hinman is like, she's a shero, like nobody, in my mind, like nobody's business. She said she hopes that the show will debunk the perception that profilers like to say, something like Sherlock Holmes. And she said she hopes that it will inspire others, people, male and female, to become profilers. And she said, every time the phone rings and an agency asks me to help, it's an honor. And I know that she means that. And the fact that she covered this case on her pilot, her show is like fantastic.
Is she still active now?
Well, I think she does like private consulting. I looked her up. She does have like, Wikipedia page, but it's not like maintained. She's like 68 years old now. She was 49 or something.
Yeah, she might be retired.
Yeah. She was 49 when the show started, and she's a kick-ass boss babe. And I just couldn't believe that she had covered this case for the pilot of her show. If you can find on Court TV, like I said, the show ran 2001 to 2008, I guess.
They're probably available on Netflix or something.
Yeah. Because they were really interesting shows. I mean, she was just like no nonsense, and just like had, and here's why I believe this way, and here's why I think this person is this. I mean, the two cases she covered in the pilot, one was a young girl that had been stabbed in her home, and a teenage girl. And Dale Hinman said, it's someone who lived very close to her, who knew her well, blah, blah, blah. 5 years later, a 23-year-old man who'd gone to high school with her, rode the school bus with her, was arrested at his apartment for murdering her. He hadn't murdered anyone else, became obsessed with her, murdered her, didn't do anything else, and she, helped them. The fact that she helped them catch these two people and many others is really a fascinating piece of her history, because she is a cool chick. So if you have any idea who the Sorrento Jane Doe is, and we will post pictures, because you can find information about her all over. You can take a look at the pictures. If you were in Florida in December of 1991, if there's somebody you know of who went missing and never came back, maybe this could be them. You can call the Lake County Sheriff's Office at 352-343-9529. The agency number for her case is 91-12-1337. And if you want to look her up in NamUs and see if you recognize anything from her earrings to her clothing, anything, NamUs case number 6031. And more cowbell.
If you'd like to support this podcast, go to patreon.com/just the Tip-Sters.